Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We are going to be streaming live on Instagram and LinkedIn. So we're going to be connecting Instagram just to make sure that you're hearing us, you're seeing us, and we can have this conversation going. Shanae and I are super excited for this conversation. Like, we're super excited, and at the same time, we're nervous because we've never done like a duo collab, making sure that we bring you the content that we have. So as soon as we are popping up on Instagram, we're going to get in.
We're on Instagram too.
So we're on Instagram. Awesome. If you're connecting with us on Instagram, make sure that you tap into that question, drop your comments in there. Let us know how you're feeling. So I know we have let me just make sure that I'm on Instagram here as well. So for a lot of you, it's midweek. The week has been the week for some of you. So for some of us, we have had like a lot of things we're dealing with. So one of the things that I wanted to do is to make sure that we do a check-in. Before we get started, let's do a check-in. How are you feeling? Where are you connecting with us from? Let us know in the chat. If you're on Instagram, let us know. If you're on LinkedIn, drop that in the chat. I know my LinkedIn family is there. I appreciate your support. I know Shanae has a very, very active community on Instagram. So it's such a pleasure to be able to share this platform with you, Shanae. Thank you very much for saying yes.
And we're seeing some comments in the chat on Instagram. Okay. So someone said, don't hide your personality ever. I think we are really getting some excitement about this topic, about Black women showing up authentically. So I'm excited to have this conversation today.
Oh, yeah. I love that. I love that. And that's what we're going to be talking about, right? That's what we're going to be covering, making sure that at the end of this conversation, you leave here feeling inspired and empowered to step out and be your authentic self. Like, we're not hiding anymore. We're not, trying to negotiate with ourselves as to how we're going to show up, what that means, if this space is going to accept us this way or anything like that. We're not doing that. So while you put in the chat how you're feeling, where you're connecting from, I'm going to ask you, Shanae, what's your superpower? I believe we all have a superpower. Like, what's your superpower?
I would have to say that, just one. Like, I think I'm pretty talented at a couple of things, but one of my superpowers, I would say, is my curiosity. So just having the ability to go deeper in my conversations, asking really next level questions. So I've always had this, even as a kid, right? I'm super inquisitive, asking my mom, like, why do we do it this way? And I think that translated pretty well into my career in HR, right? So I would have exit interviews with employees on their last day, and I'm asking all these deep questions to get to like the root cause of what's happening in order for me to better do my job. But I also see it translate now as a coach, right? So working with clients to really understand, well, what is actually preventing you from showing up authentically, not just the fact that you can't do it.
Yeah. And I can tell you all this. Shanae and I, how long have we been connected? I think
it's a couple months.
A couple months now, right? Yeah. And I can tell you, even preparing for this live, that's her superpower. Right? She's very detailed, very intuitive, making sure that all the parts and everything works. It's not just, okay, let's do this live and have this conversation, but let's just make sure at the end of the day, the wheels in place, everything is working, and we have a proper framework and a proper structure. So I can tell you, when she says,
I love me some structure. I love me some structure.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So thank you very much for sharing your superpower with us.
What about you?
Oh,
Like you have to tell
superpower.
us your superpower.
Superpowers, like superpowers for me, it's, I think like you, I'm like, oh, which one should I choose? Which one should I go with? But I think one of the things that I like about myself is being resilient, right? It's not easy making changes in your life. It's not easy deciding that you're going to follow your authentic self. You're going to be true to yourself. You're going to decide, okay, these are my values. These are, things that are important to me, or these are decisions that I want to make. And so being resilient to know that they're going to be pushback. There's going to be somebody in some room somewhere that's going to tell you, don't be this kind of person, don't show up this way, don't wear that. And I think one of the things that I really appreciate about myself is being able to kind of listen to myself and power through and have the resilience to know, even if things don't always go according to plan, even if there's some, bumps in the road, even if I have to navigate some difficult conversations, at the end of the day, it's knowing that I'm doing it from a space that's important to me. That means that I'm putting myself first. That means that I'm making sure that I am feeling more confident, comfortably in who I am. And so that level of having the resiliency to just power through whatever happens. I mean, I moved here from Antigua a couple of years ago, went into a pandemic and decided that, oh, why not start a business? I mean, who does that? But hey, why not, right? No community, no friends. Why not start a business? So I appreciate you asking the question of superpower.
Yes, I love that. And if somebody wants to share their superpowers in the chat, let us know what your superpower is and how you show up authentically. But let's get into this conversation today, right? Because people want to know how do you do this, right? There's all this conversation about Black women showing up as their authentic self, and a lot of people are like, well, it sounds easier said than done. But I think we should first start with just defining it. What does it mean to you? So you, as an image coach, Salida, how do you define showing up as your authentic self?
Oh, that's the thing, right? We hear the word authentic self, or we hear authenticity, be yourself, and it's like, what does that mean? Like, how do I do that? And so for me, being your authentic self come down to a few things. One, what are your values? What are some things that are important to you? What are your non-negotiables? Like, what are you're not willing to compromise on? And when I say your non-negotiables, these are things that help you with your personal development, help you with your personal growth, help you to advance in your career or your business. It's not my non-negotiables is that, I'm going to be stubborn. Like, no, right? You have to be open to learning and growing. But knowing what those non-negotiables are, things that you are not willing to compromise about yourself, and that if you do compromise that, you don't feel like your authentic self. You feel like if you get into an environment that parts of you are being left behind, if you have to look at yourself and say like, oh, I'm one person when I'm at work, I'm a different person when I'm with my friends or family, that means that in some way there are parts of you that is not in alignment, and you have to decide for yourself, like, what are those parts that I'm leaving behind, and is it important for me to be my whole self?
Mm, mm.
Yes.
So I want to ask you a question because I know you work with women on their style and image, right? So when you work with women who are in the corporate space, they're going on these interviews, maybe preparing for these board meetings, right? And I look at interviews as sort of like that first point of entry to where you're able to showcase your authentic self, right?
Yeah.
So how do you help women do that?
First of all, let's burn the cardigans. Let's burn the black and white outfit that we were told, the
No shade
black.
to anybody who is wearing a cardigan today. Okay. I just want to be very clear that we are not shading anybody.
No, we're not. If you're wearing your cardigan or your black and white suit as a power piece, as in you feel confident in it, absolutely go for it. If you're wearing it because you were told this is the uniform to fit in and it doesn't feel natural to you, then of course, this is what I mean by that, right? if you're wearing something that is not comfortable for you, it does not allow you to express your individual and personal style. Please, that's what I'm talking about, right? Because when we go in for interviews, I know at least when I was interviewing, I was told, oh, that professional outfit, that professional look is the black pants, the white button down shirt, and the black blazer. And every woman needs it. Every person needs to have that in their closet because that's how you go into an interview. And so for me, when I'm working with my clients, like authenticity is super important to me. Authentic styling is how I allow, like when I work with my clients, just to make sure that your personality is coming through. Now, you may be someone who love like a full yellow dress, but going into an interview with a full yellow dress may not feel comfortable or may not suit the environment. But can we add a pop of yellow to your outfit? If you decide to wear, okay, I'm going to wear a black suit, can we make it, instead of a white top, can we make it a yellow top? Can we maybe add a yellow accessory if you're going to wear the black and white? So that's how I get women to like think about in that, because that entry point, that interview is your entry point in telling everyone in that company who you are, like your true and authentic self. And going into that position is like, yeah, decide how can I add my personality. One of the things, your natural hair, we know how that big is, what that is for a black woman. And you standing in front of the mirror going, okay, I need to go for an interview, I need to pull my hair back in one. It's like, no, what feels more comfortable for you to wear your natural hair? So it's kind of like just deciding for yourself what parts of you want to add to your personality, to your wardrobe. And so I was thinking of like, kind of like thought back to like my first interview that I did. And I'm going to ask you, Shanae, what did you wear? What did you wear on your first interview? Like when you had your first job interview, what did you wear?
Well, I actually feel like you dragged me because I did wear the black and white. So I'm feeling a little bit dragged because I did wear the black and white. I wore my hair in a bun because I wanted to avoid questions, right? So by the time I got the job, I didn't want anyone to be like, oh, you changed your hair, you cut your hair grew, all the questions that we get. So I was like, all right, let me tie this 18-inch weave up in a bun so that way nobody asks me these questions. And I wore the black and white. Actually, my shoes were red. So I did add a bit of color. I had a black dress in one of the interviews that I went on and like some red flats. But one of the outfits that I had, now that I think about it, it does not show my personality at all. I had navy pants, a white shirt, and a nude blazer. So very like neutral colors. And y'all see what I'm wearing today. It's like very printed, very loud. So it's definitely not showing my personality. But one of the things I started doing, I went on, this was like a couple years ago, I went on an interview and I started contemplating, like, do I take out these braids before the interview? And then I was like, if I have to take out my braids to get a job, it ain't the place for me. So I was like, I'm going to go on this interview and I'm going to rock these braids and see if I get the job. I did get the job. Good news. All right. I got the job and was able to work with like a brilliant woman who we are still friends to this day. But I did have that fear there as a Black woman. Like, am I going to be judged because of how I'm wearing my hair? Also, one pro tip that I wanted to say when it comes to interviewing, now I like to wear a little bit of green because green is the color of money. So if y'all out here interviewing and y'all are trying to collect your coins, wear a little bit of green, okay?
I love that. And that's what it is. You connect whenever you're getting dressed, whatever you wear tells a story either to yourself or to that person that you're connecting with. So if you're going in for that interview and you're like, okay, I'm about to get all my coins, why are you not showing up as someone who's about to get all your coins, right? Because saying, okay, I'm going to wear that green, you saying to yourself, I'm wearing this green because I'm going to ask for my worth. I'm not negotiating anything lower than what I want. And so walking into that room with that mindset, you have, yeah, if they came lower than what you're asking for, that green is going to remind you like, no, Shanae,
we came to get the money, collect it all.
right? And so that's why it's so important when you're presenting, when you think about that entry point, what is that message that you want to say to yourself? And I honestly, there's so many, what you did is not something, it's not unique to you. Like so many of us have done that, black and white. I remember when I was interviewing for my first job, I went and I got a pinstripe. Yes, I got myself a pinstripe suit, black and white suit, and wore a white inner shirt with it. I can tell you this. That is not me. Like, you can't get me to wear pinstripe today. Are you crazy? That is not me. That had nothing to do with me. But I was told to get a black and white suit. And the closest thing that I could have gotten, because there was no black suit, was a pinstripe black and white suit. And I got that. And, you know, when we think about authenticity and being your authentic self, that's what we mean by that, right? Looking at your wardrobe, looking at the way you speak to yourself. Like, what are parts of yourself are you holding back, right? Which leads me into this conversation that we're talking about the entry point, which is the interview. Now you're on the job, right? Because, you know, we decided, okay, we're going to go into the interview hiding parts of ourselves. And now we're on the job and we're like, oh, I need to be myself. I need to show up as my authentic self. I need to be my bold, bright, confident self. But you're like, okay, how do I do this? Because I don't know, I'm tired of code switching. I'm tired of feeling like every day I get dressed, every time I leave my home, I'm leaving behind 60% of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that for a moment.
So I do think, like you touched on, the physical piece, right? So your appearance is part of it, but the other part is around communication. So I look at authenticity as a form of self-expression. Do you feel comfortable and safe enough to fully express yourself? And I know for me, I know what it is that I need to be able to thrive. So if I can't wear jeans, it may not be the company for me, right? If I'm working in an environment where everybody is suited, that may not be the environment for me, right? Yeah. So I know that about myself. And I also know that communication is something that's really important to me. I have boundaries, I communicate assertively, and I need to feel safe enough and comfortable enough that the communication between us is open and transparent. Yep. But I think that the way I know that I'm communicating authentically, right? I remember a couple of years ago, I was in a team building meeting and we had just did this exercise to find out about all your strengths, your development areas. And I'm like, okay, cool. So now they know all this about me. And then we went around the room and the moderator, the facilitator asked, what do you want your team to know about you? And the first thing that came to mind was like, I don't like small talk. And I was like, if we're really going to work together, you don't have to ask me about the weather. Trust me, I can see it's raining out my window, but I really pride myself on building really deep and meaningful connections. So let's talk about things where we can get to know each other. You don't need to ask me about the weather. We could all see it outside. Yeah. So I realized at that moment, I was like, oh, this girl is really like just saying it. And I know it's hard because a lot of times people think that you can't be an introverted Black woman in corporate America, but trust and believe you can, okay? If you have the boundaries and communicate like your expectations, it's really possible, but you just have to let people know how you absorb information. Like letting your manager know, I may be quiet in this meeting because I'm observing. I will speak when I have something of value to speak on. I don't need to speak every time I'm in a meeting to show that I'm visible, quote unquote. Right? We all can recognize the people who are just talking to talk, and that's annoying as hell. I'm just going to keep it honest, right? So I think for me, it's all about communicating, right? Yeah. Communicating assertively, being able to put my thoughts, feelings, and just concerns in words, right? Working with a manager. So going back to like the interview process, the same way we're trying to see if like, oh, if I wear my hair in braids, if I wear my natural hair, I'm going to see if this environment's for me. I'm also checking to see if the manager is for me, because I need to work with somebody who is open and receptive to communication. It's a two-way street. I would never be able to thrive with somebody who's like, oh, just do this because I said so. My mama don't even talk to me like that. So it's like, it's just not going to work. And I think being so sure of who you are, right, before you even get in the door can definitely help.
Yes, yeah, yes to all of that. Yes to all of that. Before I respond to that, I just want to say thank you very much for everyone that's joining us live right now, whether or not you're on LinkedIn or you're on Instagram. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate you being part of the conversation and just adding your just your takeaways, if there's anything that really resonate with you, and dropping those in the chat, because that's going to power the conversation and make sure that anyone that's sitting on the fence trying to figure out, like, how do I be my authentic self at work? How do I bring all of me at work? And that's, share your stories, because that gives someone else a permission to say, hey, you know what, this resonate with me as well. And so these are some of the things that I'm doing. So if you're doing, what are some of the things that you're doing to be your authentic self? Share those in the chat. We'll appreciate that as well. But Shanae, you just made like really good points in one, setting those boundaries, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm being as understanding as possible, because I know, like, everyone is not going to be like us, right? Everyone is not going to show up and say, okay, this is me, and you're asked in a meeting and you're not shying away from actually using your words and saying, I don't do small talk, right? I don't do small talk. I don't, like, that's something that I don't do. I'm very awkward when it comes to,
It's
when I'm
exhausting.
it is. I need to have like a role and a point to be able to communicate. If we're in a team meeting and it's about sharing ideas and just brainstorming, like, I know the role of why I'm there, and so it's important for me to contribute, because at the end of the day, I want to make my voice, I want to make sure my voice is heard. I want to make sure that whatever we come up with as a team, it works for all of us. So I'm pretty good at that. And so one of the things I want to just kind of like talk a little bit on, like, for those persons who don't necessarily have, because we're still talking about on the job here, right?
Yep.
Who don't necessarily have that. And this, because this is the reason why we're having this conversation as well. They don't necessarily have, I don't want to use the word courage, but they haven't quite found their voice as yet to speak up and say, okay, what you just said, I didn't like, or knowing that, okay, when it comes to my appearance, I can wear this because my environment is, and this is where you have to understand your environment and the dress code that your company has, so you know what you can and cannot do. So for those persons who are still finding their voice, what would be your number one tip for them to say, okay, yeah, you talked about it a little bit, but that's somewhat from your perspective. I'm sure you've worked with women who are, trying to find their voice and negotiate for themselves, because I've had clients like that as well. Like, what will be something that you, like, one thing that you will tell them when it comes to finding their voice?
Um, I think you have to start small, right? So obviously this is something that I wasn't always like this, right? But well, I'll take that back. I was like this. And then when I got into corporate, I probably dimmed my light a little bit at times. And then I had to find that voice again. So I think you have to start small. You may not come out swinging, right? In terms of like, I don't like small talk. That may not be something that you say, but you may want to tell your manager, hey, you keep calling me at 11 p.m. I'm trying to rest, right? And setting those expectations of maybe I shouldn't be working till 11 p.m., right? Or maybe I shouldn't be answering the phone when my manager calls me at 11 p.m. So I do think that you have to start small with setting certain boundaries. Even when somebody calls you the wrong name or mispronounces your name, correcting them in that moment. Yeah. No, my name is actually Shanae, right?
Yeah.
Doing things like that will start to build that trust muscle. Yep. And I know you asked for one tip, but
go for it. Go for it. Because that's what we're here for, right? I mean, those are great points. because I remember, just not to kind of like, I'm gonna give you the mic back to like kind of expound on that, but just to give an example of why it's so important to set those boundaries and to make the correction in the moment. Because if you allow someone to offend you in any way, whether or not that is the way they pronounce your name, to making a comment about your appearance, if you don't correct it in that moment, then that person is taking that as a sign that it's okay to do that, right? When it's not. So we have to, even if your voice shake, just say, you know what, Shanae, I really didn't appreciate what you just said, right? And at the end of the day, persons are going to learn that, oh, you're using your voice, and you'll build that confidence in using your voice. But continue.
So that was my sort of tips for like speaking up. But when it comes to showing up as your authentic self, like the same things would apply, right? Start small. Maybe it's like, you know what, I'm gonna wear my hair out on this Zoom call. I'm gonna show up that way. But I also think it's important to expose yourself to people who are actually showing up the way that you want to show up. I think sometimes we highlight the disadvantages of showing up authentically. Like, oh, did you see that girl got fired for speaking up? But what about the women that are making it to the C-suite, doing it by being themselves, right? When we look at Bozoma Saint John, when we look at Tashonda Brown Duckett, right? C-suite leaders, CEOs, right? So Tashonda Brown Duckett is a CEO who wears box braids. Like, if that's not the inspiration you need to go ahead and take it, like, you see these living examples, right?
Yeah.
And I think that we just have to start exposing people to women who are doing these things, as opposed to focusing on the bad case, like the worst case scenario.
Because what we do, right? What we do as individuals, what we do as humans, we look for the things to validate how we feel. It's like the world is telling you as a Black woman that you can't show up in this space as your authentic self. You can't wear your natural hair. If you wear bold colors, like, ooh, you're trying to be too loud. What are you doing, right? And so when we hear someone else maybe was told, oh, don't wear your braids, or maybe told in another company, you're weird, and like, oh, that's an indication that we should not. But as you just said, we have amazing examples of Black women who are showing up as their authentic self. I know you know how I feel about Bozoma Saint John. When I discovered her, I was like, yes, Jesus.
I
know.
want to touch on, oh, go ahead. Because it was something that you said, and I think that we need to touch on this.
Yes, let's go.
It was something that you said, I can't remember verbatim, but sometimes we allow people to get in our heads, right? Saying you can't do this as a Black woman, right?
Yes.
There's all these rules and stipulations of what we can and cannot do, how we should look, how we should act, how we should behave. And that level of micromanagement sometimes comes from us, right? We're just going to call a spade today. It comes from us. People, when I say us, I'm talking about sometimes it's people in the Black and brown communities who are like, oh, you can't say that.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
You should keep your head down.
Preach.
And what advice would you give? Because this comes up a lot, right? I get this question all the time of like, well, what happens when it's someone who looks like you? And I'm going to be honest, it hurts a lot more when it is a person of color, when it is another Black woman, and you're like, damn, sis, like, I was rooting for you.
Like, let me be me. Stop micromanaging me. Let me be me. No, and this is the thing. We have to know when the advice is good advice and when it's bad advice, right? Because you don't want to be, as I said, stubborn. It's somebody saying, you know, you're wearing a shirt that's really exposing all your girls to the world, and it's not really, it's like, yeah, if you see something like that, it's like spinach in your teeth, right? If you see someone with spinach in their teeth, you just pull the person aside and say, hey, you know, you got a little green thing there. And so, you know, let's get rid of that. So if they're wearing something that really and truly is revealing, and this is the work that when I work with my clients, whether or not it's doing a wardrobe revision to just dressing them for the occasions in their life, whether or not it's speaking on stages or doing virtual presentations, is making sure that you are wearing clothing that fits your body. It's not creating a distraction, but it's allowing you to shine as an individual. So if you know for a fact your image, what you're wearing, how you're presenting yourself, your natural hair, where you're wearing maybe your box braids and they're nicely groomed and long, and that person says to you, another Black woman come over and say, do you really want to wear that? Like, you shouldn't be wearing that at work. You shouldn't be doing that. Then I'm about to check you. Right? I'm about to check you, because what happens, cultural differences and the way we are brought up, we have to take that into account. Before you decide to tell another Black woman, don't wear her natural hair, check your upbringing and your beliefs, right? Because we're having this conversation today. I'm a Black woman from the West Indies, Antigua and Barbuda. You're a Black woman from the US, live in this particular state. You know, you live in, if it's okay to say, can I say where you live?
Yeah, I live in New York, y'all.
You live in New York, right? You live in New York. So the way we speak, the way we interact, the way we notice things, and the way we express ourselves are going to be completely different, because our background and upbringing are completely different. But if the end goal for us as Black women, as an image coach and as a leadership coach, is saying, you know what are we trying to do collectively together? We're trying to change how Black women show up in the workplace. We're trying to change how Black women feel about themselves. So even though we may have a different way of looking at things, what is the common goal? We have the same, like, the outlook. The way I express myself is totally different from you, right? I remember when we were planning for this, you're like, yeah, I see how you said that all nice and calm, and you're looking for like the perfect solution and sentence. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to say it. But at the end of the day, we're saying the same thing, right? So we have to check before we micromanage each other, check and see where that's coming from. If you were brought up in a home where you were told, put your head down, get that job, go to work, put your head down, and just like do your work and go home. But there's another Black woman in that same space that's using her voice, that's speaking up for injustices that she sees around, that's negotiating and working on behalf of other Black women, that's wearing her braid and her red lip. Don't say to that woman, please dim your light.
Or tone it down.
Or tone it down.
We love to tell Black women to tone it down. You're doing too much.
Like, what is too much based on whose definition is too much, right? You and yourself have to do that check. Like, yeah, am I doing too much? Like, what is too much for me? What is too much in this environment? But at the end of the day, please, we already have all these different microaggressions that we have to deal with. We already have all these challenges. The last thing that I want to see us do, and I know you don't want to see the same thing, is for us to micromanage. Like, I cannot tell you, oh, Shanae, you should not wear your hair in braids. Like,
yeah.
Like,
and I think in a moment like that, right? So like, let's say you were to micromanage me. And I think like sort of going through this probably will help somebody who's watching, because like you said, you would check somebody, right? But even if it's a simple, thank you for your feedback. I'm actually not seeking advice at this time, right? Simple. I'm not seeking advice. Or even if you say something like, thank you for the feedback, I'll take this into consideration. I think sometimes we start to internalize the messages that we receive. And when really we should be looking at it as like, if somebody gives you a sweater, you don't feel obligated to put that sweater on, right? Yeah. You don't feel obligated. If grandma gives you a Christmas sweater, you're not like, oh, I need to wear this tomorrow. You're not like in a rush to wear it. And I want all of us to start to look at feedback the same way, right? Yeah. Look at it as something like, maybe I need to try this on before I actually integrate this into my life. How does this feedback make me feel? If somebody is telling you, don't wear your hair this way, or somebody is telling you, don't wear this color, wear the black and white pinstripe, right? You could stop and pause and say, how do I feel about this?
Exactly.
Like, does this fit me? And I
Exactly.
think it's important to just quiet the outside noises and voices sometimes, right? So one of the things that I tell myself is like, I'm the only expert on me. There's not a person in this world who can tell me who I am. When I was about 4 years old, my mom used to do this exercise with me before I went to school. And she would say, what would you do if somebody called you stupid? And I would be like, but I'm not stupid. Like looking really confused, but I'm not stupid, right? And I think she was like prepping me for bullying. She was prepping me for some of the messages that I may receive like
Yeah.
out in the world. But what it does show you is that only my voice matters.
Yes.
I
Yes.
am the only expert on me,
Yes.
right?
Say that.
It's not another
Say,
person.
say that. Say that again. Say that again. Because if we allow those outside voices to control our narrative, our beliefs in ourselves, and this is why sometimes you have, women who don't feel confident showing up, Black women who don't feel confident showing up for themselves, who don't feel confident negotiating for themselves, who don't feel confident wearing what they want to wear in terms of self-expression, but fitting into making sure that they're, dressing appropriate for those environments, because we're allowing everyone else to decide and determine what is best for us, when really and truly we have to do that internal check in saying, okay, what is important to me? And this is where I talk about your values. What are some of the things, setting those boundaries, and what are some of those things that are non-negotiable for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, at 4 years old, that's a lesson that, it's like, but you realize at that point, your mom was just basically saying to you, no one can tell you who you are. Only you can do that for yourself, right?
Yes.
No matter
I think
what
my
they
mom
say.
is watching on Instagram. So thank you, Mom. Thank you for all
Thank
the
you, mom.
tools.
Yeah, right. And we need that a lot, because not all of us may have grown up in that environment. And
Yes.
so for us, I know the work that we're doing is to make sure that women are equipped with the tools to be able to advocate for themselves. So I love that. And so this conversation, like, we had an allotted time that we were going to go for this conversation, but it's been so great. Like, I'm so loving it. I'm loving what I'm seeing in the chat. I'm loving just the camaraderie and just kind of like sharing ideas and knowing how can we be our authentic self, right? So as we think about being our authentic self and we're wrapping up this conversation, I wanted to ask you, like, what advice would you give to someone who is fearful of the consequence? Because there's one thing to say, be your authentic self, wear that red shoes, wear that red lipstick, wear that braid, have your natural hair, use your voice. It's one thing for us to say that, but there are women out there. I've worked with women, you've worked with women who are like, one of the biggest concern and fear that they have is like, ooh, if I try this, maybe I won't get the promotion, right? Maybe I won't get the job when I go in for that interview. Maybe I'm going to be marginalized and being stuck in, one space, office, whatever it is. It's like, what advice would you give to that person, that woman, that Black woman who's saying, I am tired, but I'm also a bit fearful?
Whew. I'm trying to think of how to answer this question because what I'm about to say may not appease someone who is fearful, right? But I do think we have to stop trying to fit in spaces that don't deserve us, period. Okay? So if you are worried about how you show up, if I wear this top, I may not get a promotion. Like, that is not the space for you. And I think for so long, we've sort of operated in a space of, I'm so grateful to be here. And I think you can be grateful. I think expressing gratitude is definitely needed, right? You don't want to disrespect your blessings, but you also have to recognize when this space is no longer serving you,
Yes.
when it's
Yes.
time to go.
Can
And
somebody put in that chat? Can
I think we
somebody
got
put in that
we got an
chat?
amen on Instagram.
Amen.
Somebody's put
Yes.
amen. But
Amen. Like,
it's
you
so
gotta
true.
know.
Like, I think it's been so limited, right? When we look at how many Black women are in leadership positions, it makes us think that it may not be possible for us, right?
Yeah.
Because we're not seeing it. But the way we've been doing it ain't working.
Nope.
It ain't working. So if everybody is like, oh, I'm going to put my head down and I'm not going to say anything when I'm in these rooms, I'm not going to challenge somebody because I'm fearful. I think this is how we end up with instances like Walmart putting out Juneteenth ice cream.
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
somebody got to be in a room and say, this is not it. It
Yeah.
has to
Yeah.
be, it just takes one person to have the courage to say, no, I think we should go in a different direction.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, but could you consider this? Right?
Absolutely. And if you voice your opinion, if you then give like, okay, this like taking the Juneteenth ice cream, like that's not a good thing to do, and they still do it, then you have to then do that self-check. It's like, is this a place that I want to be at? Right?
Exactly.
And then you plan strategically. We're not saying if you realize that's not a place for you, just pick up your bag and just go. Like, no, start working on your exit strategy, what that looks like. But don't stay in an environment that does not support or benefit you in any way. It sounds like, okay, it sounds easier said than done, but people are actually doing that right now, right?
Yeah. And I think it's important to surround yourself with the people that are having these conversations. Surround your people that are showing up this way, who feel comfortable challenging,
Yeah.
ideas, thoughts, right? So Luvvie Ajayi Jones, she says something like, when we show an act of courage, we give others permission to do it. So it's like we're loaning courage to each other. So
Exactly.
Salita, if you and I are in a team meeting and I see you challenging our manager, I'm like, oh, this is possible for me. So I think
Yes.
that we have to start to figure out what is possible, and it is possible. We're seeing women doing it. Also, be in communities of women who are, like I said, who are talking about these things.
Yeah.
One of the programs that we offer with No Cream in His Coffee is our healing hour, where we unpack and really go deep and talk about the challenges and barriers that we as Black women face at work. But also, let's talk as a group and in a community of like, how do we work through this?
Yeah.
And that has been really, really just like this beautiful, safe space. And I know you've attended, so
Yeah,
you
I've
could.
attended. I can tell you that, and that's what we need, right? It's really that safe space. If you don't have the courage as yet,
Yes,
you're
yes,
working on the courage and the confidence, and just saying to yourself, first of all, you recognize that this environment or how you're feeling needs to change. You not being to be able to bring your whole self to this space needs to change. Having a space like the healing hour with Shanae, it's somewhere that I've realized that, okay, yeah, these women know they're in a safe space where they can talk it out. And basically it's like therapy with the action steps that you can take, so you know, okay, oh, so I can say this, and this is the way I should say it if I'm starting out. And so you get that help with it. And I really do believe, like you said just now, it's like, yeah, yes you can be this person, yes you can be your authentic self. And so I absolutely believe that you can be your authentic self. And so I came up with how you can be your authentic self using the word can. Let's go. Yeah, that whole chant. Yes you can, yes you can, yes you can. You have to commit. You have to commit to saying, okay, I am not happy with the fact that when I leave my house and I go to work, there are parts of myself that I can't bring.
Mm.
So, what commitment am I making today to ensure that every single day that I leave my home, I'm taking myself into that room? And if that room doesn't accept me, what would I do to change that room? So, we're going to commit. And then we're going to affirm ourselves, because we're like, oh, but I don't think that's possible. And we're putting our heads down. It's like, no, I am worthy of being in this space. I am worthy of showing up as myself. And you say that to yourself, use those I am affirmations. Like, yeah, I look good today. I'm sorry. If if you If you can't look at yourself and go, damn, I look good today, then we need to do some work, right? And that's where styling comes in terms of giving you that confidence in knowing that, okay, I can wear clothing that makes me feel great. I can wear clothing that allows me to express my personal style. I can wear clothes that allows me to affirm myself. And once we affirm it, we're going to normalize it. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
normalize it. And to normalize it means that every room, space, situation that you go into, go in 100% as yourself, because what you're doing, as Luvvie said, you're giving another Black woman the permission who may not, who have still have to do that work to say, yes, I can be myself. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I can bring myself into this space. And so, Shanae, I know you touched on a little on the healing hour. And I think it's something that for a lot of Black women, we do need that space. So I want to give you this opportunity to kind of like share a little bit more on that, because I know you have one coming up. And if you're on this live, if you are on Instagram or LinkedIn, connect with us, connect with Shanae, because the healing hour is the place to be, where you get to work on your mind, you get to work on how you talk about yourself, how you approach. And then, of course, with me, you get to talk. I'm not in the healing hour. I'm just there as a guest. But Shanae, go ahead, because I think it's important that we share that aspect of it.
Yeah, thank you for that, and for reminding me to mention that there's one coming up. But this month we are talking about difficult management styles, right? So, what are some of the common challenging management styles, but also how to navigate through them? So, you know how we talked about this whole internalizing certain messages. You may be working with a manager who you are finding to be really difficult. Let's
Yeah,
talk through ways of like how to navigate it, right? But if
yeah,
it's something that is impacting your mental, your physical, or emotional health, again, maybe that's not the space for you. Maybe that
yeah,
manager doesn't deserve you on their
yeah.
team. Okay. Maybe you need to find another space that is deserving of you. So the healing hour is June 22nd. It's at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. If you are watching on Instagram or if you're watching on LinkedIn, you can follow No Cream in This Coffee on Instagram and click the link in the bio and you can register. It's a free event and it's really intimate. It's really about being open and transparent, but also like being in community, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of us are working in these jobs and we're the only, so we ain't got nobody to talk to about how this person done pissed us off. So
Yeah.
this is that opportunity for you to really share and bear it all.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's the thing. Community for us is important. As Black women, we need to build that community, create that safety and that safe space for us to express ourselves and to have more conversations like this, right? I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I'm hoping that, those of you that joined us live or you watching the replay, that you enjoy the conversation as well, because there's possibilities and room to have more of these conversations, right? What do you say, Shanae? Is there a possibility of more of these conversations
I think
happening? Like,
so. If you're still on, like, let us know in the chat if you want more of these conversations. We'll see. We'll see what
yes,
people say.
yeah, we'll see what everyone is saying, because it's important for us to make sure that we're equipping you with the tools to be your authentic self, not to be your authentic self, because you're already you, right? This is not about being authentic. This is about showing up and showing the world exactly who you are. So thank you all very much for joining us live, for just being in the chat and just sharing your feedback and your opinion. Definitely more. I see those comments, so thank you.
We
Thank
see
you.
a few people saying
Yeah,
more.
yeah, I see. But we appreciate that, right? Because these are the conversations that's going to allow us as Black women to really show up for ourselves and each other, right? Not just in how we advance in our career, but also how we show up in terms of our image and how we present ourselves. So thank you all very much for joining us on LinkedIn, on Instagram. We appreciate you. Do remember to connect with us. You can find, as Shanae says, she's on Instagram, No Cream in the Coffee. No
No
cream
cream
in
in
this
this coffee.
coffee.
No cream in this
No cream
coffee.
in this
And
coffee.
I am on LinkedIn, Shanae Brown. You can find me, search me. So yeah,
Yes.
I'm so glad we had
And
this conversation.
me too, me too. And I'm also on Instagram as Style to Impact and over on LinkedIn. I appreciate my LinkedIn family. There it's Solita C. Roberts. You can find me there. Let's connect. Let's continue this conversation. If there's something that we said today that resonate with you, of course, reach out to us and we will continue the conversation with you. Thank you all very much for joining. We appreciate your time in being here. Have a great rest of the week, guys. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.